Donald Trump is coming off his most impressive week since the RNC, and the momentum is building as he pivots his campaign with personnel changes and polling that seems to show this is still a tight race. Last week, I broke down his speech on how to make America safe again, including his new immigration policies and a plan to deal with worldwide radical Islamic terrorism. But that was just the beginning to a fantastic week for the Republican nominee. Trump is at his best when he's giving his policy speeches. The teleprompter has become Mr. Trump's friend the past week, as he gave 3 more fantastic speeches and another last night as well. Early last week, Mr. Trump took to Milwaukee amidst the riots, where he gave an impressive law and order speech just outside of Milwaukee in West Bend, Wisconsin. Just watch as Trump outlines his plan to deal with the big uptick in violent crime in American inner cities.
The violence, riots, and destruction that have taken place in Milwaukee is an assault on the right of all citizens to live in security and to live in peace. Law and order must be restored. It must be restored for the sake of all, but most especially for the sake of those living in the affected communities, of which there are many. The main victims of these riots are law-abiding African-American citizens living in these neighborhoods. It's their job, it's their homes, it's their schools and communities which will suffer the most as a result. There's no compassion in tolerating lawless conduct for anyone. I believe all Americans, not just the powerful, are entitled to security. Hillary Clinton has had her chance. She's failed at so many things, almost everything she's done. Now it's time for new leadership. The Hillary Clinton agenda hurts poor people by far the most. There is no compassion in allowing drug dealers, gang members, and felons to prey on innocent people.
This was just the beginning of a new theme and appeal by Trump directly to the African American communities so disproportionately affected by the violence we are seeing.
I'm asking for the vote of every African American citizen struggling in our country today who wants a different and much better future. It's time for our society to address some honest and very, very difficult truths. The Democratic Party has failed and betrayed the African American community. Democratic crime policies, education policies, and economic policies have produced only more crime, more broken homes, and more poverty. The African American community has been taken for granted for decades by the Democratic Party, and look how they're doing. It's time to break with the failures of the past. I want to offer Americans a new and much better future. It's time for rule by the people, not rule for the special interests which we have right now.
So of course, it took no time for the mainstream media and Trump opponents to begin criticizing him over this position. But as he would later go on to famously say, "What the hell do you have to lose?" He is dead right. Just look at any major city in the US with a violent crime problem or a poverty problem, and you will see Democratic mayors and councils and policies that are clearly failing their communities. I, for one, commend Mr. Trump for breaking from typical Republican talking points towards the African American community. And I genuinely believe that he means it when he says he's looking forward to dealing with the problems they face when he becomes president. As you probably heard, Trump also made some personnel changes to his campaign last week. Out is Paul Manafort, and in is Steve Bannon from Breitbart News and Kellyanne Conway, a longtime Republican pundit and commentator. And perhaps this also provided a shift in tone last week from the usually unrepentant Trump.
Sometimes, in the heat of debate and speaking on a multitude of issues, you don't choose the right words or you say the wrong thing. I have done that. And believe it or not, I regret it.
What I liked most about that apology and admission was that it wasn't too specific to allow the press to say, well, what about this comment or that comment? Why did you apologize for that? He would never satisfy them that way. And yes, while being broad and giving a mass apology to anyone who he may have hurt personally, it gives us just enough of his softer, more compassionate side. It's the same compassionate side we saw when he flew down to Louisiana on Friday to view the massive flooding and damage thanks to the worst disaster to hit the region since Hurricane Katrina. His opponents in the press quickly accused him of wanting nothing more than a photo op for the campaign and trying to show up President Obama during his vacation. And while the latter is true, that has everything to do with Obama's inaction and nothing to do with Trump's decision. As for the sincerity of his visit, well, I don't personally question it, because I have it on good authority that he left a sizable personal donation behind. So the question now is, where's Hillary? Where's the Clinton Foundation? Well, I'm sure the people of Louisiana aren't who the dictatorships of Saudi Arabia and Qatar or the Emiratis of Dubai were hoping their donations would go towards. Besides, Clinton knows she won't be winning Louisiana, so why would she care? Just another great example of why Donald Trump, who isn't a politician, gets it. So where does that all leave us today? Well, I mentioned polling earlier, and it's clear whatever bump Hillary received after the DNC has now been lost, as most polls have her up only 2 to 6 points. But I tend to stay away from polls conducted by major national news organizations like TV networks, and I tend to prefer polls conducted by or in partnership with universities. In particular, I like the University of Southern California LA Times polling, as it's updated daily. You can see today they're tied at about 44%, and Trump was up a couple points just a few days ago. But take a look at the bump in African American voters. You can actually see a noticeable spike last week up to 14%, right in line with his speeches directly addressing the African American community. Now that number would exceed Mitt Romney's performance in 2012. And if he can keep on message and even extend that number up to like 18-20%, then we can just add another thing to the avalanche of problems facing the Clinton campaign in these last few months. For the Rebel.media, I'm Christopher Wilson.
Thanks for watching. Click here to never miss a Rebel update. Want even more of the Rebel? Well, click here to become a premium member.